Hey everyone, this is Black Garcia, and welcome back to my channel. Thanks to one of my longtime viewers, I will have a comprehensive review of the newly released Warhammer 2C later, but today I'm just going to focus on the Bludgeon, which is the variant that most of you should have gotten for free. If you don't have it now, you should be able to buy it for MCs in a few months. I'm going to get straight to the point here. Although the Warhammer 2C has a lot of potential, this variant I'm just not too impressed with. It has the advantages of a clan battle mech, which means it has access to clan weapons and equipment, along with being able to change engine, structure, and armor type. The engine limit is 385, so it doesn't suffer from low limits like some other clan battle mechs do. The IS Warhammer has pretty good hitboxes, which also carries forward to the 2C version. Its torso-mounted weapons are positioned pretty well. They're not high, but they're not too low either, and they're placed close to the cockpit, which makes convergence on projectile weapons better. Currently, I think the Warhammer 2Cs are undersized, and if you compare it with the IS Warhammer, which is 10 tons lighter, the IS version actually appears bigger. This is something that PGI will probably fix in a future patch, so while it's an advantage right now, I wouldn't count on it being there for too long. However, this variant is hampered specifically by the low number of hardpoints for a clan assault. In fact, it has the least number of hardpoints among all the Warhammer 2C variants, and if you include AMS, it has less total hardpoints than the Atlas AS7K, which is a well-known example of a hardpoint limited assault. I think PGI believes this balances the Bludgeon's ability to carry jump jets. But in practice, JJ's own assaults don't do very much these days, and I'd much rather trade this for another hardpoint of any kind. What this does is severely limit build variety, which is made worse by the fact that you've got two other energy-heavy Warhammer 2C variants. Given the strengths of the chassis itself, offset by the limited build types and firepower, the Bludgeon ends up being a very mediocre chassis. I can see why PGI wants to gimp this mech though, since most active players are going to have it, and they have to be very careful of power creep if a very strong chassis is going to be seen in the game for several weeks. That said, let's get into the two builds that I think are more or less worth running on this Warhammer. We'll first tackle the obvious one, which is Quad ER PPC. This is essentially building to its 15% ER PPC velocity quirk. In my version, I've decided to take off ferrofibrous armor for a smaller engine and more heat sinks. I leave the jump jet in there since I think the benefit of that 1-ton JJ outweighs one extra heatsink. The main problem this build has to deal with is the existence of the Warhawk Prime, which has more structure, a faster and cooler ER PPC, more heatsinks, and a TC. The performance of this build can be good depending on the map that it gets selected. If I was building a Bludgeon for a long-range FP map, then this is what I would bring. But since the solo queue is so DPS oriented right now, quad ER PPCs, especially without heat quirks, don't output enough damage over a 4 or 5 minute match to make me recommend this build. But if you like ER PPCs or playing the range game in solo and you don't want to buy the Warhawk, this isn't the worst that you can do. In the following gameplay demo, I haven't fully skilled up the mech yet, but I would just copy paste the skill tree from my Warhawk Prime, which focuses on heat gen and velocity. The first tree I would prioritize is the operations tree, since your DPS is going to depend on heat dissipation. My preferred build is this Laser Vomit ATM setup, which has much better DPS output than the previous build. I normally don't like hybrid energy missile builds with a single missile weapon, but in the Bludgeon's case, we don't have much of a choice if we want more than a medium max level of firepower. The reason why I try to avoid lock-on missiles as supplemental weapons to energy or ballistics is that both these weapon types allow you to fire and twist. With the lock-on missile system added to the build, you have to stare at the target until the missiles hit. This opens you up to return fire to the components you normally want to protect, like your CT. On this build, the way to mitigate this is to use that ATM selectively. If you're facing a lot of return fire, just forego the 24 to 36 points of potential damage from this one weapon system and protect yourself. When you're not getting shot at though, the ATM can do some work. For my skill tree, I'm mostly focusing on those that enhance DPS, but I'm also going to put a few skill points into mobility since I think it plays like a skirmisher, which needs mobility to get in and out of favorable positions. If you haven't seen my skirmishing tutorial video, I'll link it in the description below. Okay, let's get into some matches. So in this match we're on Frozen City. Now, Frozen City Assault can be very favorable to ranged builds like this, but we're on Frozen City Skirmish, which often ends up being short range. But we do have these opportunities to kind of take some shots at range. So in the beginning, what we want to do is try to get as much range shots off as possible and then use that advantage when we can. But eventually we do have to follow our team and you know, try to get into a position where we can shoot more often. So for example, if I move to the left side, that could cause two problems for me. Number one, I could get flanked by lights. Number two, if the battle happens within the kind of the echo, sorry, the 7 line here, then I don't always have shots and my DPS would be wasted. I talk more about these disadvantages of sniping in my sniping video, which I'll also link below. But now we're kind of getting into the mid-range where my range advantage is really not that big of a deal anymore. Even though, like, still, you know, Frozen City being as cold as it is still favorable to this build. It's just not, I mean, I can't just take full advantage of this build in a lot of solo queue matches. One of the things that I do want to point out is that once you have advanced zoom, which I do on this build, you have a tendency to use it, in which in a lot of cases, you don't really need to use advanced zoom. So you get into the habit of pressing that advanced zoom button whenever there are targets that are somewhat far away. And that can waste time if you really don't actually need to use that view. As you can see, that shot to the side, that's something that the Warhawk can't do. So it doesn't have those lower arm actuators for it to shoot towards the side, like I just did. But overall, the Warhawk's going to be a better ER PPC mech. That was a pretty big strike. I didn't expect that strike to hit me from where I was standing, but it was a pretty wide strike there. And we're just trying to move towards the enemy's back, like in a normal NASCAR. That's the thing that you do in solo. And there's a Warhammer in our back, like over there. I don't want to deal with it right now. I don't know how that ER PPC shot missed, but it did. I hit on the second one, on the second salvo, but the first one missed for some reason. We're a little behind right now, and that's going to be a problem for us. So with this Warhammer here, I want to try to hit at its center torso, but it's kind of twisted away from me, so I'm not able to do that. Like shots that are not CT and kind of towards the side are more of a waste than somewhat wasteful. Anyways, this Highlander is all the way back there for some reason. I don't know how it got there. But yeah, we need to take it out. I'm gonna try to focus on the bigger mechs first. since that commando is pretty fast and can avoid my ER PPCs fairly easily from that range. I also didn't buy my weapon groups correctly. For my fourth weapon group, I intended to put only one ER PPC in that. So like sometimes I shut down because I intend to fire one ER PPC and I actually ended up firing two instead. Finally, that guy goes down. So now you can see it's like 11-8. I didn't know the status of my friendlies at this point, so I know that we only have like one mech to take down. So I wasn't really being too careful right now. I thought we got this. But one guy goes down. And I see this guy, okay, he has like an open CT. If I just put some shots into him, you know, the rest of my team is gonna take care of it. Even if I die. But little did I know, like all of the rest of my teammates are sticks, so we did eventually lose this one. What I really wanted to show in this match is how hot the build is and how it can perform in a more favorable scenario. So hopefully that's something that you can see from this demo. Alright, in this match we're on Polar Highlands. If you're running this build, you do want to prefer maps like Polar Highlands or other maps that is more open and will allow your ATMs to travel. So we're getting into, trying to get a little bit closer to the enemy. Right now we're about 500 meters out. Not the ideal range for ATMs. And because ATMs do make up a large part of our firepower, we do want to get into those ranges where we can do 2 to 3 points of damage per missile. And so that means we're trying to get under like 500 meters or so. Over 500 meters, I believe that's when your missiles are doing like 1 point damage per missile. Another thing to note, in this match I was using 1 ton less ammo that I'm carrying than I'm showing in the build earlier. So this is, I believe, 2 tons versus the 3 tons that I'm carrying. Actually, I think you can probably get away with 2.5 tons for most matches, but 2 tons turns out to be a little bit too low for some of these matches. I also try to build with MPLs, large pulse and MPLs, but I found that I really needed a little bit more range. So I was thinking, well, you know, I want to use the ATMs at around 300 or so, 400. But in reality, the ATMs can be shot at 500 meters, 400, 500 meters. And so that's why I just went back to the ERMLs, because that range profile fits ATMs a little bit better. So even though Polar can sometimes be a range map, you can see like in this instance it's a NASCAR around one of these hills here. And in NASCAR situations, DPS is very important. So this build is going to be a lot better than ER PPCs if you're just simply talking about raw DPS. Just NASCAR again and again around these hills here. And within that, you know, the 270 range, the ATMs do a lot of work.
Keep going at CT on him. Nice.
See, if I'm getting shot at, like I'd rather just, you know, find. Even though I'm like an assault, I still want to find cover. This is not a type of build that, you know, 1v1s mechs. It's mostly there. This build is mostly there to provide supplemental firepower and not really get shot all that much. If it does get focused on, as you can see, you give the enemy a lot of face time, especially with that ATM, having to wait for that ATM to hit.
Echo's still alive, damn.
Also wasted some ATM shots in this match too. For example, that one, like the min range on ATMs is 120. I was shooting at like 100, so I did, waste some ATM ammo here. But in general, I think 2 tons is a little bit too low, and 2.5 or 3 tons is probably going to be a lot better. So you'll see that this match only lasted 4 minutes from when we started fighting to when it finished. So you can kind of see how important DPS is in the modern solo queue, which is why I prefer this build over the ER PPC build that I showed before. Alright guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave me a like and make sure to subscribe for more coverage of the Warhammer 2C in the very near future. I'll see you next time.